guys, it's Andy here and welcome back to another standard deck tech. This is a Butcher combo deck that I've put together for you guys with the new War of the Sparks stuff come out. The cards are now up and playable on the beta server of Xmage, so I've been giving them a crack. This is an untested deck, so the deck will probably change after some play testing. The land base might change, some cards might be taken out, might find better stuff to go in. This is just a starting point and I'm just trying to get these decks out there. So the combo that I want to talk about before I talk about any of the other cards, I'm just going to touch over the main deck here, talk about the sideboard, interactions between, and hopefully you guys enjoy the video. But the combo we've built around, and the whole reason the deck is even a thing, is the potential turn 3 win, which comes from Dreadhorde Butcher, which is for 2. It's a 1/1 zombie warrior with haste, and when it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Then we want to have the Colossus side of Collision Colossus, which is for 2 at instant speed. Target creature is +4/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. And Thud, which is for 1 red at sorcery speed. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you sacrifice a creature. Thud deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to any target. Now we're running all of those in 4-ofs because we want to be doing the combo as often as possible. And how the combo works is on turn 2, we're playing out the Dreadhorde Butcher. He's going to chip in for some damage because he's got haste, so he chips in for 1 damage and then he gets a +1 counter on him. So now he's a 2/2. On turn 3, we're going to be playing Colossus, giving him +4/+2, making him a 6/4, chipping in for 6 damage, putting another +1 counter on him. Now he's got 7 power. And then Thud, along with sacrificing the Butcher and triggering his own ability to deal damage, is going to deal them another 14 damage, which on turn 3 brings us to 21 damage total. The rest of the deck is kind of redundancy and other ways to kind of help us do this if our initial game plan or the turn 3 doesn't happen. With Judith, the Scourge Diva in a 3-of, we've got a 3-cost 2/2 human shaman with other creatures you control get +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature dies, Judith deals 1 damage to any target. What's going to happen is we're going to get extra damage from the Dreadhorde Butcher. She's giving him a buff, so if he dies, it's dealing extra damage. And because of her own trigger, if anything dies, she's going to chip in for a little bit of damage as well. So it's really just helping us race against our opponent. Dreadhorde Arcanist in a 4-of, which is for 2, 1 in a red. It's a 1/3 zombie wizard with trample, and when it attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with current mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If you would put that card into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So if the Arcanist attacks in as a 1/3, we can get the 1-cost spells from our graveyard and recur them, which is really, really cool. But one of the really cool synergies with the deck is because of all the anthems we've got, or even the buff spells. So if we play Colossus, or the redundancy for Colossus is the 4 copies of Giant Growth, which is for 1 green at instant speed, target creature gets +3/+3. So we can play the Giant Growth on the Arcanist, making him a 4-power guy. And then because he's a 4-power guy, when he attacks, we can recur the Collision Colossus and give him the Colossus side as well, making him an 8-power guy, and then doing the same thing with the Thud, potentially being able to deal a lot of damage. 4 copies of Gutter Bones, which is for 1 black. It's a 2/1 skeleton warrior that enters the battlefield tapped, and it's got pay 2, so 1 and a black. You return Gutter Bones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn, and only if an opponent lost life this turn. So if we've got this on turn 1, we can play it out. Turn 2, he can swing alongside the Dread Butcher, which means we can chip in for another extra couple points of damage, meaning that we don't have to have the Colossus to win with the Dreadhorde as a part of the combo. We can do it with the Giant Growth as well. So as long as we've got the Butcher and Thud, there's 8 other potential cards that we're still going to be able to do it with, depending on how our start is. To help shore that up a little bit more, we've got 4 copies of Heartfire, which is for 2, 1 in a red. It's an instant speed, and as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, and Heartfire deals 4 damage to any target. So going past turn 3, if our combo hasn't happened, but we're still trying to race them, say we've got some damage in, so we've got the Dreadhorde Butcher, he's still pretty large, or they go to kill the Dreadhorde Butcher, then we can Heartfire in response, sacking him, essentially giving us an extra Thud effect, or more of a sack outlet, so that we can trigger Dreadhorde's second ability, but being able to deal 4 damage on top of that regardless. So it's not quite as effective as using Thud when the Dreadhorde Butcher is buffed, but it's still going to be getting in for a lot of damage, helping us a little bit more on the game plan and shoring it up a little bit more. And Shock in a 4-of, which is for 1 red at instant speed, you deal 2 damage to any target. Just adding to the turn 1 plan so that we can chip in for a little bit more damage to be able to play the Giant Growth Thud plan instead of having to play Colossus. To help our creatures hit the board in the more controlling matchups, we have 2 copies of Rhythm of the Wild, which is for 3, 1 a red and a green. It's an enchantment with creatures you control can't be countered, and non-token creatures you control have Riot, which allows us to have our creatures come into play either with +1 counters on them or or haste. Playing a 1 mana 3/2, playing Arcanist as a 2 power guy from the start, being a 2/4 trample, or playing the Dreadhorde Butcher as a 2/2 and he's already got haste. I felt like Rhythm of the Wild was definitely worth running at least a couple of copies of, especially if we're in the colours. And to finish off the spells, 2 copies of Theatre of Horrors. Just there to help us with the more grindy matchups, being able to get more card advantage out of it. So Theatre of Horrors is an enchantment for 3, so it's 1, a black and a red. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theatre of Horrors. And it's got pay 4, 3 and 1 red. Theatre of Horrors deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Again, just giving us more card advantage in the deck. You could be running stuff like Risk Factor, but I just felt like Theatre of Horrors was a better way to do it. Looking at the land base here, you'll notice I'm not running any basic lands. This is just the first draft of it. I might find myself tweaking it. For a little bit of graveyard recursion, I'm running 2 copies of Memorial to Folly. Enters battlefield tapped. It's got tap at black or pay 3, tap sack it to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, allowing us to get our cards back. So because of the color combo, we need to be getting green, red, and black by turn 3, which means we can't afford to care about whether or not the Painland is going to be hurting us. So we're running 4 copies of Stomping Grounds, which comes in tapped. It's a mountain forest unless you pay to your life. 4 copies of Rootbound Crag, which comes in tapped unless you control a forest or mountain. 3 copies of Overgrown Tomb, comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life, Swamp Forest. Woodland Cemetery, same as Rootbound Crag, except for Swamp or Forest. Blood Crypt comes in tapped unless you pay 2 life, Swamp Mountain, and the Dragon Skull Summit. So we're running the full cycle of Jund, Check, and Shocklands, but we really just need to be. And the sideboard is really heavily based on us having a bit more game against control, because we are running a super glass cannon. You're trying to run a turn 3 combo that's very reliant on 1 or 2 cards. So it's going to be a glass cannon. We're going to struggle against control. So the sideboard I put together was specifically with that in mind. So looking at the sideboard here, we have 3 copies of Gear's Blessing, which is for 2, 1 and a green at sorcery speed. Target player shuffles up to 3 cards from their graveyard into their library. You draw a card. And when Gear's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library, allowing us to get our combo pieces back from our graveyard if that's where they've ended up and put them back into our deck, potentially giving us more chances to get to them. 3 copies of Duress, which is for 1 black. At sorcery speed, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. Just hand hate to hit the removal pieces, hit their counter spells, which is why we're also running 2 copies of Drill Bit, which is for 3, 2 and a black at sorcery speed. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, the player discards that card, and it's also got Spectacle 1 black. So you can play it at a 1 cost if an opponent's lost life this turn. Drill Bit, really good card, absolutely love it. Probably not something you want to be running too many copies of, but it's definitely worth a couple of slots in the sideboard, I felt. 2 copies of Cindervines for the really spell-orientated decks. So for 2 red and a green, it's an enchantment, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player. You can also pay 1, sacrifice Cindervines to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So if we're playing against stuff like Phoenix or a lot of stuff that's just trying to combo off and storm off, Cindervines can be really good, absolute all-star, really good in the sideboards. I've played against it a few times and it can be an absolute nightmare in the right matchups. And in decks like this where we are trying to race our opponent for damage, it can be really, really good. 2 copies of Liliana, Untouched by Death in the sideboard here. At a 4 cost, it's a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Her +1 ability is put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If at least one of them is a zombie card, each opponent loses 2 and you gain 2. Her -2 is target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of zombies you control. And her -3 is you may cast zombie cards from your graveyard this turn. So the entire relevance of her being in the deck is so that we can play back our Dreadhorde Arcanist or our Dreadhorde Butcher from the graveyard. If we're playing up against a lot of removal or a lot of control, definitely when she wants to be coming into the deck, just to give us a little bit more recursion. And adding to the recursion, we also have 3 copies of Find Finality, which is either for 2 hybrid or for 6. So at sorcery speed, you return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Again, just adding to the recursion that we can have against control matchups, or Finality for the token matchups or the go wide strategies. So Finality is for 6. You may put 2 +1 counters on target creature you control, and then all creatures get -4 until end of turn. A lot of the times it's just a really, really good board wipe going in the mid to late game. So that is the sideboard, and that is the main board. Let me know in the comments what you would do. This deck's still really fresh. A lot of people are going to be trying to work out the kinks. This is just my take on the deck. You guys will probably have your own. Let me know in the comments cards that you think might belong in the deck, or cards that I've got in here that you think don't belong in the deck. And with War of the Spark coming up, you can definitely be expecting more brews coming out soon. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see new videos as they were released. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, you can throw me $1 on my Patreon at patreon.com/SandersQuest. And I will see you guys in the next video. Keep questing, guys.